Welcome to the Fantasmagorium Show. On today's show, I am joined by Kat and Naladoc as we discuss the cinematic experience of Spider-Man No Way Home. There will be spoilers. Rosebud. Let's go. Hey, everybody. We just saw Spider-Man No Way Home. I want to do this as a preemptive. No, totally spoilers. We're spoiling this. We're talking about everything. If you have not seen this movie, then don't watch this video. And if you have seen this movie and the year is 2030 and you wonder why we're all freaking out, welcome to the decline of your culture. So anyway, I am joined by experts who have seen this movie as recently as today, the first of which is a handsome man. He comes all the way from Earth. His name is Naladoc, and I am happy to click the button that brings him on screen as he supples.
Greetings, and it's from the wonderful state of Ohio.
On Earth, though.
The Cowlands in Earth, yes.
Yeah, well, Cleveland rocks, so that's cool.
That's a long ways away from here.
Either way, still in Ohio. And also coming live from Martini's Gadgets and Guns and several conversations where she is absolutely the expert of every conversation. It is just a great pleasure to see Kat.
It's good to see you both.
Greetings, Kat.
And also, just to shout out another friend of the channel. If you don't like this show, you can go watch Chandra live on Twitch. I don't know how to use Twitch, so if you know how to use Twitch, you should go check her out. If you don't want to talk about the spoilers from Spider-Man: Far From Home.
No Way Home.
Whatever.
They're all this. Can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah, please.
Well, okay. Why all the home names?
I don't know.
I think
because Far From Home made more sense for this movie.
I think that Homecoming was them being cheeky about, he's back at Marvel.
True.
Where he belongs. Far From Home was just, for some reason, I don't know, that was like,
because he was in France.
We want to continue the trend, so let's just do that, even though it's not really that applicable. It's like, wow, you went to Europe, but whatever. And now for the third one, I think it is applicable given the ending.
Okay, I'll give you that. You are the professional.
Well, okay. So before we get into the No Way Home, can I just call it Spider-Man? I'm just going to say Spider-Man when I'm referring to this one.
We're watching this for
Spider-Man 3.
This is a spoiler show, correct?
Yeah, of course.
We got to give a warning that this is a spoiler show. And
that Aunt May.
We can call it the Spider-Mans.
The Spider-Mans?
Spider-Mans, yes.
Yes. Anyway. So... That's racist. Anyway, so hang on. Let's reel it in. So, what is your introduction to Spider-Man as a character?
Like in general?
Yeah.
I was aware of a lot of the Marvel characters for a long time, but I probably didn't start paying attention to it until the Raimi trilogy came about.
Okay.
I remember that when Spider-Man 2 came out, the video game coincided with the release, and we spent countless hours playing that in the summer with friends, and that was just amazing.
Such an amazing game. Just swinging around New York, it's great.
When we went opening day to see Spider-Man 2, one of my friends wore a green spandex suit for Green Goblin. The other took this piece of cardboard that he had duct tape tentacles coming out of the shirt for Doc Ock. And they wanted me to wear the spandex Spider-Man suit, and I'm like, no, I want to be going to the movies. So I'm not gonna wear them. And so that was fun. And then after Spider-Man 3, it was like, okay, but I was pleasantly surprised by the first of the Garfield. So then on it goes. But I never started reading the Spider-Man comics until only a few years ago.
Okay. Naladoc?
I'm older than you all, but my first experience with Spider-Man is the Electric Company. And the silent Spider-Man with word balloons teaching to speak, because I was a young child in the early 70s. And I was never a huge Spider-Man fan. I worked in a comic store in Toledo, Ohio for many years in the 80s. So I did read a lot of the books, but I was never a huge fan. I was there for, the Todd McFarlane era when he came on and blew up like crazy and created Venom and all that. But Spider-Man was always in the peripheral. I was a bigger DC fan. Always, I know, but I'm a Justice Society guy. Earth 2 all the way, baby. But
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. But we went to see the movies and all that. I still have never seen the Homecoming movie though, because like I said, I'm not a huge fan, but out of all the Marvel MCU movies, I don't think Matt and I have ever seen Homecoming. So we'll watch him when we see him. We like him. We like the character. We don't dislike the character or any of that world. But yeah, I come at it from an outsider perspective almost as a fan.
Well, and my experience, this is definitely like, speaking of No Way Home, this is an MCU Spider-Man, and so the appreciation of Tom Holland has to come in there. So your experience with the Tom Holland Spider-Man is through, let's say, Civil War and Avengers Endgame and Infinity War.
And then the second movie in France. We did go see that one.
You sound like Ferris Bueller from the Godzilla movie. He's from France.
One?
France. In my Great Lakes accent in France.
But the Mysterio one?
The Mysterio one, yeah.
Yeah, they don't go to France in that one, but they were going to.
Oh, I thought they went to France.
No, they were talking about her. He planned to give her the necklace at the top of the Eiffel Tower, but because of all the shit that was going on, that part of the trip got canceled.
Once again, you were right, Scotty. Cat's photographic memory of script story ideas is coming to bite me in the ass.
Well, I did watch those movies the other day before I went to
Okay.
Cat keeps us honest with facts.
Yes.
It's great. So you haven't seen the first one. You saw the Mysterio one, and now we get to No Way Home. And are we like, Cat, how available are you for a recap? Can you recap it?
Scene by scene, probably not as accurately. I think I could do that.
I apologize for interrupting the show. Kat, if I can see you at camera too. Like, we do Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns, and you do such an excellent job of recapping the movie.
That's also because I watched the movies like literally right before the show starts.
I literally just watched Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, I can remember most of the scenes. It's not necessarily the order of a lot of the stuff that happens, because admittedly it is a bit of the way it goes.
Then, as opposed to niggling a point, if that's a word, what was a highlight of Spider-Man Far From Home? Like, in terms of a recap, you have Spider-Man who is bogged down by his identity being revealed from the events of Spider-Man 2, 3, and then so everyone knows he's Spider-Man, and so he finds himself drawn to a magician, the Sorcerer Supreme, or at least formerly.
Yeah.
And he decides that he's going to make it so that no one remembers that he is Spider-Man. And then he gets cold feet midway through the spell. And that just blows everything out of proportion. Luckily, Doctor Strange, the Wizard of Question, he collapses the spell and puts it in a box.
Yeah, I didn't really buy that. Like, even when they put the first trailer out, I'm like, there's no way Doctor Strange would just do that on a whim, especially without explaining to Peter are you absolutely sure this is all the things they're gonna have? And in the movie, they play it off like, oh, I've done it before. You remember the big winter party or whatever? And he's like, no. He's like, see, and it's like, I still didn't buy that he would just do that because it seemed almost too big of a thing to do, especially like you said. Oh, I keep forgetting that. He gets mad at Peter. He's like, oh, I keep forgetting that you're a kid. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. You wouldn't do that for a kid without making sure that, hey, you sure you really want to do this?
But I do appreciate that level of friendship between Doctor Strange. Sorry, I'm getting some reverb back there. But I like that relationship in terms of Peter starts calling Doctor Strange sir, and Doctor Strange is like, don't call me that. It feels weird. Call me Steven. No, that's also weird. It's like, I appreciate the friendship that Stephen Strange would make that spell happen for one of the Avengers who helped him stop Thanos. Thanos? Yeah. Like, I believe that part of the relationship, that dynamic. And also knowing, like, I think that if I have to kick off my problem with this movie is that all I'm seeing is actors. I'm not seeing characters.
I didn't feel that at all.
I didn't feel that either.
I felt that.
A couple things threw me. One, when Peter's arrested or first brought down, he's being interrogated, and he says, "Oh, just check with Nick Fury. He'll be able to vouch for me." And the detective says, "Oh, he's been off world a year." I'm going, wait a minute. Wasn't the whole point in having Talos pretend to be Nick Fury in the last movie that he's trying to let people on Earth think he's still there? So that was like, why does a local detective from the police department know that he's off world, but Peter, nobody else seemed to know? That was a little weird. I don't know why Otto Octavius immediately knew that Green Goblin was Norman Osborn when he saw him on the bridge, because he wouldn't have known.
But that's believable, because Otto and Norman Osborn, they lived in the same universe, and Oscorp.
Peter was the only one who knew.
Yeah, what?
And he hadn't told anybody, and Doc Ock, died before. Harry and Peter are the only ones who ever knew that Norman was Doc Ock in that trilogy. Nobody else really knew that. So how did Otto immediately, when he sees the Goblin coming, he's like, "Oh, Norman," and I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Okay.
That was
but I'll allow it. Like, that's one of those things that I'm like, I'll allow it. It's fine. Having interaction between the Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus was actually just a joygasm.
I mean, you could still have them interacting. There's no reason for him to know that that's who Norman is.
I'm sure, but we're not talking about the movie that you want to have happened.
I'm not saying about the movie you want to happen. I'm saying that's something that threw me as being very odd in the movie.
No, but the thing is, and honestly, I was sitting there and I'm counting the entire time, and I'm like, is this a Sinister Six movie? And it was so close to being a Sinister Six movie. It was so, again, like, I loved that aspect of it. Thomas Hayden Church being like the voice of reason, it mirrored the character in the comics, like Sandman being conflicted, and it also carried on the storyline. I have a daughter from Spider-Man 3.
I thought that's one of the big things they botched in this movie, because in Spider-Man 3, it was very weird how his journey in the movie ends before, because that movie begins establishing that he has a daughter, that he's desperate to help her because they don't have the insurance, and that's why he's a thief. He becomes Sandman, and it's not until later in the movie that they add the retcon that he killed Uncle Ben. And so when Peter forgives him at the end, it's like, okay, great, you forgave him, but what about the problem that this character started with? And then he just kind of flows away in the wind. And so when he brings it up again, his daughter in this movie, I thought, oh, okay, that's nice. They're gonna, somehow provide some closure to that story, and they didn't really. You almost kind of forget about him after he gets cured. Peter's just like, okay, wait here, and then you don't really see him again.
Like, I thought it was very interesting that with the Lizard, it's like, the Lizard is here. Great, good. I love Rhys Ifans. He's great. He clearly was not in any of the scenes. Maybe he did some voiceover work in his studio at home. But it's like, now I'm cured. Thanks. I'm down an arm. It's like, you didn't do anything to help this guy.
Well, that's true, because the only character who benefits from Peter's plan of, oh, we're going to cure you, is Norman. Because in the first movie, Norman didn't have like a world-ending scheme that needed to be stopped, and he inadvertently killed himself while Peter was trying to talk him out of it. So with his secret being, with nobody knowing who he is except Peter, he'd be safe going back to his timeline. He'd be fine. Doc Ock, it made it sound like he disappeared right during the climax of his own movie. Like, because the first thing he says to Peter is like, "What'd you do with my machine?"
Yeah.
And he's still going to have to die drowning the machine.
He does still have to die. That's the one thing, but I mean, that's not this movie's story to tell.
Right. And then but I just meant that because Peter's issue is that I can't remember which character says it, but these characters all got here because they're shortly right before the moment of death or whatever. And it's like, well, not entirely true, because Flint Marko didn't die in Spider-Man 3, but if he goes back, he's just gonna still be a wanted fugitive like he was in the end of Spider-Man 3. Same with Max Dillon. After his accident at Oscorp, everybody at Oscorp knew it was him and knew he's the Electro guy. So he's still going to, and he had hinted that he got transported there during the climax of his movie when he was trying to, tap into the power grid. So he's probably still going to be a fugitive or be arrested. And Kurt Connors, if he was in the climax of his movie when he got transported, much like in that movie when Peter cured him and he gets arrested anyway. So he's just going to go back to a prison cell. And so it's like, I get the idea of it, that Peter wants to help these people, but I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. It's sort of bizarre that Goblin, being the most evil of them, is the one who's actually going to be just fine when he goes back home.
But that's the point. It's not a matter of giving them their just desserts. I think that, okay, so we've already established this is spoilers, and I enjoy the triumvirate of the three Parkers together trying fantastic. To make it.
The beauty of it is
so that they could save everyone. So here is if you want to clip anything, Spider-Man No Way Home is my favorite episode of Doctor Who. Like, I enjoy it when, fine, it doesn't make any sense, but quite frankly, they're all together. And it makes me so happy. What's better than one Spider-Man? So many Spider-Mans.
This movie did something that most fan service movies don't do. It actually gave story beats and character to the fan wank elements.
Yeah,
they are supporting characters in this film. They are not there that pop in like, shall we say Ghostbusters Afterlife.
I haven't seen it because I was afraid of that very thing. And I did not want to see this movie because I didn't want them to just jangly keys in front of me.
Even Matt Murdock serves a purpose in the story, even though he's only there for one scene.
Oh, it was glorious he was there.
Kat, tell the humble viewers who Matt Murdock is and why it is important that he's arrived in this film.
He is a great lawyer, and he is also Daredevil.
From the television show Daredevil.
Well,
Marvel.
Technically, no. It's like they brought the same actor back, but I don't think legally they could say he's part from that continuity or those stories happened in Marvel, because Netflix technically still owns the specific storylines in that continuity for all the Netflix Marvel shows, but they're free to cast the same actors in it if they want to. So
I think
it's established that he's already got his abilities as Daredevil when the brick comes flying through the window. Which is funny because Peter comments on it. And he's like, nothing.
I think the coincidence that this week alone we had the return of Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin in the Marvel TV shows and Charlie Cox as Daredevil, because the first season of Daredevil is a brilliant piece of Daredevil. I think it's probably the best Daredevil we're going to see. Because when Marvel does it, it's not going to be violent like that. It's not going to be as dark. So to have those two perfectly cast characters who, in my opinion, I just don't want to see anybody else play them for the rest of my life. I'm happy with them. And I just, even though it was just a little tiny moment with Matt Murdock, but God, I was all warm and fuzzy.
You know that was deliberate in the timing of when they scheduled those episodes to drop as well. They wanted that to be fancy.
Did they though? Because didn't the Spider-Man's movie move because of the pandemic?
I think so.
Or was that a pickup? Maybe that was a pickup scene.
Well, but there was the whole thing with the marketing that people were like, "Show us trailers, show us Andrew Garfield, show us Toby," and no one was getting anything that they wanted, and so. Like there was a clamoring on the internet that was like, show us a trailer.
I thought it was interesting how nonchalant it was when those two first show up in the movie. It's not like in a grandiose type moment. It's like, oh, Ned does the sling ring, and then there's a Spider-Man there. And at first I thought it was Peter, the Tom Holland.
It was Peter.
And then it's like, oh, it's you. And then when Toby's just there, it's like, oh, it's you.
Well, it implies too that they got sucked into the mainstream universe and had been wandering around.
Right, because as Doctor Strange said it, everybody who knew that Peter was Spider-Man, whether that be villains or Spider-Man, are there. So technically, you could say that Kirsten Dunst's MJ was probably wandering around there somewhere.
I was waiting for that just in a slight, but it didn't happen.
Right.
I was waiting for the ladies to show up, but I think that dovetails nicely into this is the first time that I actually connected with the character of Michelle. I thought that Zendaya was delightful in this film.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't understand the reasoning in Homecoming to play her off like she's a weird, super goth weirdo. Makes all these it's difficult to explain it. You see it and you kind of get it. And Far From Home, they did a little bit of the same thing with her, where she's still kind of a little weird. And this one, she's much better.
I'm a Wednesday Addams fan, so I didn't mind her goth, but there was a disconnect, and I didn't fall in love with her the same way that I fell in love with.
It's not that she's into those things. It's the way they play it in the movie. Like in the first one, they play it almost for every scene she's in. It's like a punchline or a weird joke that she's into that stuff. And in the second movie, I felt a little bit of the same. Where it's like, you're right. This movie, I think they did her a lot more justice as a character.
Yeah, and I felt her emotions, and that's not something that she likes to reveal as a character. And so, having seen her through some of these movies, it's like, yeah, no, Zendaya, you did a good job. I find you likable. Congratulations. So shenanigans, yada, 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 and all the Spider-Men show up. Who is your favorite of the Spider-Men?
Well, between the two returning ones, Andrew Garfield. I've been rewatching the Tobey Maguire ones lately, and they don't hold up as well as they did. Something about Tobey's performance as Peter, I never really clicked with. Part of it was just like I never even bought into the Harry and Peter friendship in the Raimi trilogy. And I just watched Spider-Man 2 again, and some of it is a tad bit more melodramatic than it felt at the time I originally saw it. It's like, but I really liked Andrew Garfield, especially because I thought Garfield's Spider-Man got the best payoff in this movie when
he
saves MJ. And you knew that moment was going to come. Like the moment they showed that bit in the trailer, it's like, oh, he's going to be the one to catch her. And at first it wasn't, because that shot is actually Holland's Peter catching her. And then the same thing happens again where Goblin gets in the way and you think, oh shit. And then he actually does it. And it's like a really great moment for him. And he's like super emotional about it. And I'm like, that's the reason you bring back a character like that. You know, you don't just do it for you give it a good emotional payoff.
I know that I'm being reserved and sort of I'm being reserved, and I cried through the last half of this movie because everything was so beautiful. It was amazing.
Most of the audience in attendance in our theater were crying to some extent.
Like I've been complaining. I am a staunch advocate for the Uncle Ben in the MCU Spider-Man. I want that. And I did not get it, but I got Aunt May being Uncle Ben. And that is kind of great. Marissa Tomei's death scene, spoilers, if you made it this far, you weirdo. Like, Green Goblin kills Aunt May. It's glorious and heartbreaking and perfect.
I think Tom Holland gives one of his best performances in anything in this movie. He was so good, especially in that scene. And I especially love how, when Happy Hogan shows up and he sees it and he knows what's happening. And he said he wants to run in there, but instead he's getting arrested.
He buys him time.
Yeah.
That's why I took it as he was as a distraction to buy Peter time.
Yeah.
Run. Like they shoot him. He gets shot.
He does. Yeah. He does get shot. And then that was never addressed later, but did he have the nanotech suit on?
Who cares? I don't know. Well, because movie. But still, it was emotional impact if you get shot because when your aunt dies.
Yeah, I think he had the parent. At the time, maybe. I thought it was funny, though, that he took them all to Hogan's apartment. That was really funny. It's like and then Doc is like commenting on that. What, we're just going to sit here in this condominium and solve all our problems for us?
Well, it's because the fabricating
machine was there, yeah.
But also, like, I don't want to diminish Marissa Tomei's performance as Aunt May throughout these 3 movies, and she ultimately gets fridged. And that, I don't think that's the case. She matured a lot compared to her from Homecoming to Aunt May in this one. It's like, yeah, you're not just a hippie chick aunt. I had a mother. Her name was May Parker.
Mm.
I enjoyed everything about her, and I felt her loss, or I felt her absence when she perished.
Yeah, I did too. It's like, wow, I didn't think they would actually do that, because you're in the third movie now, and it's like you said, they skipped the whole Uncle Ben thing. They kind of did it with Tony, trying like making him like the quasi version of that, and it's like, are they going to do that again? And it's like, but they did it, but it works really well. And I love it when
Did
Peter
you really want another origin story that we've seen generally over? No, I don't think anybody wanted that.
But I love it when Peter.
The Batman movies are online too, Naladoc.
I love it when Peter tells the other Spider-Man that she told him with great power comes great responsibility, and then they kind of react to that. That
is a key scene for all three Peters.
Yes.
So what happens? What happens, Naladoc? If you could describe if you could set the stage.
They're up on top. It's the Peters. Okay, let me. It's been 6 hours now, or no longer.
No, I know.
Hours.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do.
Let's see. The Zendaya, Mary Jane, and Ned bring the alternate universe Peters to the rooftop, where they figure out and determine would be the most likely place that our Peter, mainstream Peter, is hanging out and hiding. And sure enough, he's there. And so begins the dialogue. Very nice scene of them talking, where you're starting to see that the Peters have a lot in common, and they have their differences, hands down, their differences, of course. And one of the, I mean, in the timeline of the movie, mainstream Peter has literally a few hours after Aunt May has died.
Yes.
So he is, when you keep that in mind, he is dealing with that, and the others saw that on television, and so they go and basically they try to console Peter, but he throws at them that they don't have any idea what he's feeling. And that, as those of us who've seen the other films, we know what those characters went through. Mm-hmm. So it's a wonderful scene where they slowly start to tell their stories and their
origin stories.
Well, because all three of them blame themselves for
exactly
Uncle Ben and May, and you had that great moment when she was dying where she says that it doesn't matter, we still made the right decision.
Yeah,
which makes it hurt even more that Norman killed her, and so that's what really brings it home for those three characters when they're, and that's why I also thought it was an equally powerful moment when you have that where Peter, Toby's Peter tells them, or they both really tell him that, revenge isn't really going to get you anywhere. That it's not going to do anything. And so when you see him, Peter pick up the glider about to, kill Norman,
that was incredible.
Right. And as many people pointed out, it's on the wreckage of the Captain America shield. And that got him thinking of the John Walker moment from Falcon Winter Soldier.
Oh, and I didn't think of that at all.
Right. And so, so he's bringing this thing down. I thought that Toby was going to die. The minute he blocked it, I'm like, nope, that's it. You're dead. And surprisingly, he didn't die. He just got stabbed. And
I've been stabbed before.
Yeah, like it's a joke. I'm like, is that?
But no, but he is he is injured. He's injured.
But oh my God, that was a great moment. And then when he
should have died. They should have killed him,
anyway, which is great. And then Norman, seeing that reaction from him, where he's like, oh my God, what did I do? And you're reminded that unlike the other villains, he, in a sense, is the most tragic villain of all, because he truly has no idea what he does as Goblin. It's like he's in a trance or something.
Yeah.
And I love that they brought him back to looking more comic accurate, and that he smashed that, the Power Rangers type mask, as I call it.
Could we talk about the de-aging effects? Since you just brought...
Please, feel free.
Alfred Molina's de-aging is just perfect.
Yeah, well, I didn't even know there were special effects. I just thought that Alfred Molina was handsome.
It's immortal.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he hasn't, played that role in going almost pretty close to 18 years now?
Yeah, 18 years since they filmed it.
And he was, I mean, the de-aging has gotten so good in the last, say, 7 to 8 years, hands down.
Yeah, because he even told Kevin when Kevin gave him the call to come back, he's like, but how can I? I'm so much older. I got so many waddles on my chin now. And Kevin's like, we could fix that with CGI.
Yeah, I don't know if they did it I'm assuming they did some to Willem Dafoe.
A little bit. I noticed a little bit. But once he's the Goblin in the climax, it looks like he's not as de-aged anymore because they're trying to make him look a bit more, frazzled or whatever.
But I bought into it. I never once. I love the fact that that specific kind of effect has reached a level that I buy into it and I never think back about it.
Now that you just said that got me thinking about something interesting. The other villains got transported there at the moment of near their deaths, but Toby's Peter did not. He's aged. He's lived his life and gone on since then. I didn't think about that.
You're absolutely right. Well,
they did not de-age Tobey Maguire.
Otto sees him again, and he's like, Peter, and they have like a great moment.
You're all grown up.
Yeah, you're all grown up. I didn't think about that. That's actually kind of interesting.
I really did appreciate that. And like I've seen into the Spider-Verse, and apparently they're making a sequel. I'm sure I'll see that as well.
2 of them, apparently.
Well, huzzah for a Spider. I have a fucking mug, yo. I like Spider-Man. But yeah, I've seen that, and I really did appreciate seeing like Toby is older than Andrew, and Andrew is older than Tom, and that's like I appreciate that, and that's why I say it's my favorite Doctor Who episode, is because it is seeing, okay, this is what happened, and Into the Spider-Verse sort of painted older Peter as being like, no, me and MJ got divorced. And now it's like, well, it's complicated. And I'm like, no shit, buddy. I saw Spider-Man 3 and you slapped Mary Jane.
But was that supposed to? I never took older Peter from the Spider-Verse as being the Tobey Maguire character.
No. I'm not saying that.
Okay. Because I never thought of that.
But I was also like, it's kind of a thing that I reference when talking about Star Wars. And it's nice, even as an offhanded comment, to know that Peter and Mary Jane are together in Tobey Maguire, in the Raimi Spider-Verse. Like, I like that. That's nice. And again, it's part of the reason that I felt so engaged when Andrew Garfield saves Zendaya, Michelle Jones Watson. And it's like, okay, no, but there's resolution going on all over the place. Like so there's a thing that I thought of right after the credits started to roll. And I'm not saying that we have to talk about the end of the movie, but I'm just saying this was the film adaptation of Spider-Man One More Day.
There were elements that I understand. I only know of One More Day. I don't know. I never read it, everything it was almost a culmination of Spider-Man just meeting together. There is a literal scene where you got Toby, Andrew, and Tom, and they have a Spidey hug. Yes.
There's a Spidey group hug. That's what I wanted.
There was amazing camaraderie.
There was camaraderie.
In just how many hours were they were theoretically together? 8 hours?
Yeah, sure. Let's give them 12.
Let's give them 12. And I mean, you had mentioned earlier, I could have sat there. It wasn't you, I'm sorry. But I could have sat there and just had more scenes of the three of them talking and comparing lives. I could have sat for 40 minutes watching that. But that's the kind of storytelling I like. Can I diverge for a second?
Oh, yeah, please.
Talk about what I thought was one of the most amazing scenes, which I was wondering if they were going to address, and that was the Raimi choice to make organic web shooters for Toby versus mechanical for the other two.
Yes.
And the inevitable questions that come about of whether it's kind of disgusting. I thought that was wonderful.
That was well.
Because of course they're going to be curious. We're all the same, but this is very different, and I loved it.
Yeah, and also that was something that when you watch a movie and you lose your sense of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
That was a moment that heightened my sense of disbelief. I was like, you can go anywhere you want. I don't care. This is amazing because you are acknowledging the thing. And that's great. Even they do the thing where Andrew Garfield is cracking Tobey Maguire's back.
Tobey Maguire,
it's a reference. It's a reference to the contract negotiations. He had a bad back or a back injury because of Seabiscuit back when Spider-Man 2 came out. And it's just like, how did you, what? And it's not a brief interaction. This is not a throwaway joke.
That's a longish scene. I mean,
that is a character development of two Peters being friends.
And a Peter being older, because he makes the comment when he's about his back, he goes, I don't do all this. He says something like, I don't do a lot of swinging like this anymore. So it was like, I'm an older guy doing this thing now. And I love that acknowledgement of
the reaction from Andrew Garfield when he's like, oh, really? That's good to know. I have a lower back thing, a mid back thing. I'll keep an eye on that. It was great. The character development between these actors was fantastic,
because you end up with Peters that are in very different stages of their lives, of the Spider-Man life. You have the teen still, basically the tragic, has had some shit happen to him, Andrew Garfield version, and then you've got the much more adult Peter in Tobey Maguire, who's kind of resolved some issues. It was wonderful.
I like the little joke that Matt Murdock's like, oh yeah, we don't have to worry about these charges. I can get them all dropped. And then like another scene, you find out that sure enough, all the charges got dropped.
That literally, because they just wanted to move on from that.
Which is a little bit of a shame, because I kind of thought that would be a really interesting, like from a screenwriting standpoint, how do you write yourself out of this problem? But then it's like, oh, we'll just do the multiverse.
Wizard did it.
Right, yeah, the Wizard did. And then for that
it's always
matter,
the Wizard doing it.
I guess when he performs the magic trick at the end, the idea is that it's not that he's changing realities, that Peter was never there. He's just giving everybody sort of collective amnesia so that they're unaware that he was there, and almost like they have false memories or something. Because if he was changing reality such that Peter, it was never there, then Mysterio never would have been able to reveal his identity, and the events don't happen, and it becomes like a total clusterfuck.
Don't think too much about the spell. Don't think about it, because how can you have Spider-Man there? That Peter Parker is literally Spider-Man with a mask. I mean, that Spider-Man is literally Peter Parker with a mask. It doesn't work. Just let it go.
I did think it was interesting that the spell took it to the point of not only forgetting that he was Spider-Man, but forgetting that he existed at all. I thought I'd have to see it again to track why that became the solution. But that was really sad when, especially when he goes to May's grave and Hogan's like, who are you? How'd you know her? And I'm like, because I didn't realize that was the case at first. I thought it was just that they didn't know he was going to be Spider-Man anymore. But when it's
first, I thought he was going to, when he said go back to the original spell, I thought it was the spell before he started saying, but, and messed it up.
Right. So that was really, and to go for such a downer ending too. It's like, it's really sad.
But the thing is, and this is this is part of the reason why I have so emotional feels about Spider-Man No Way Home, is because it emotionally fulfills. With great power comes great responsibility. And it is not Peter relying on his relationship with the Avengers. It is, okay, so if I have to save the world, which he does have to, many of them, if that means that no one knows who I am anymore, well, that is my power. And son of a bitch, it's my responsibility. And I think that it actually makes, like, it really.
I did like that.
I don't like this origin story trilogy, but I love this origin story trilogy.
I did like that moment, though, when Doctor Strange came back at the climax and Ned and MJ are like, look, he did it. It's working. And he's actually surprised. It's like, oh, my God. It's like, I'll be damned. He's actually doing it.
Oh, for sure. Well, not he. Well, I guess he, but three he's.
Well, that's a funny reaction, too. And he sees all three of the Spider-Men there. And he's like, oh, God. Deal with this. But,
and that's a funny, you know what? That was a great interaction between all of the Spider-Mans. All the Parkers, it's like, guys, I know how to work in a team. I've been an Avenger. And then Tobey Maguire's like, great. What's that?
What's an Avenger?
then Garfield's like, "Is that a band? Are you in a band?
Are you in a band? Are you in a band?"
Oh my god, this is my favorite episode.
You guys don't have Avengers? No.
No. Anyway, so I suppose
they even made the Iron Man Jr. joke in this movie.
Really?
A lot of people were complaining about, they've turned the MCU Spider-Man into Iron Man Jr. And I think it was it might have been during one of Jonah Jameson's broadcasts or somebody mentions it in a mocking fashion. Oh, you're just Iron Man Jr. type of thing.
Well, and we haven't said anything about J.K. Simmons reprising.
Oh, that's so funny how in the beginning they show his green screen where he's in his living room or something, and then because of how popular the story is, he's suddenly in a big studio, and the next time you see him, I thought he was going to be the one to screw everything up because he's the one who follows him to the apartment, and I thought, oh shit, he's going to do something, and then it wasn't him.
He's very much Alex Jones in the MCU.
Oh,
he's
yeah,
very much, and it's interesting. I mean, once again, they cast the same actor, because he was fantastic in in those first 3 Toby films. But I thought he was going to do something with the Lizard, because the Lizard was in the van, and that didn't play out in any real way at all. But yeah, I thought he was going to be more involved in that, but he wasn't, because he's in a way he's an antagonist. He is his own villain for Spider-Man.
I did like that joke also. And during one of his broadcasts, you see on the ticker tape on the bottom, "Why does Spider-Man hate national monuments?" And then when Peter tells him on the show that he wants to meet at the Statue of Liberty, he's like, "Of course, you have to destroy that too."
Although, okay, so and then we also get the Iron Man shield being grafted to the Statue of Liberty. I thought that was rather gauche.
Captain America.
Captain America as a shield.
Who did I say?
Iron Man.
You said Iron Man.
You literally have the shield behind you on your wall, and you said Iron Man's shield.
I'm not familiar with Shazam.
Ooh, it's Captain Marvel. Quiet you.
Captain Carter.
Anyway. Go.
I especially love that moment in the fields when Peter's finally in his new apartment and he puts the Lego Palpatine with the light thing. That's how Ned was introduced in the movie, in the first movie.
Okay, that was how, because I meant to say I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah, he walks up behind him at school and Peter's opening his locker and with the Emperor Palpatine on his shoulder, he's like, "Join me and together we will build my new Lego Death Star." And that was that was so sad when he puts the thing on the desk and it's like, oh my god, this is too much.
There was a Lego Death Star in one of the scenes.
There was. They brought
and I okay. So it all has meaning then. For me, it was not having seen the first film.
It's great. You should. The first one's pretty fun. But speaking of
we're streaming, I couldn't find it, so it's never ended up, because Marvel doesn't have it, so it's not on the Disney.
I thought they put it briefly on Disney Plus. Maybe they took it off. I don't know.
But it could be available on Amazon Prime.
Notice how the payoff from how there isn't a payoff from the mid-credits teaser from Spider-Man: Homecoming, where Vulture is in prison and he's confronted by Matt Gargan, the Scorpion. He's like, "Hey, this injury to my face, it's not on you. That's on the Spider-Man. Rumor has it you know who he is." And he's like, "If I knew who he was, he'd already be dead." And Matt Gargan's kind of discouraged to hear this and walks away. And then Vulture has this look on his face, like he deliberately protected Peter's identity in that instance, and it's like, oh, maybe that means something, and it's going to come back, but apparently not.
Well, speaking of things coming back, we do have some. We get some Tom Hardy.
Yeah, I expected him to show up in the climax at some point, and he did.
Well, I came.
Well, yeah, and then the mid-credit scene when he shows up, and I'm like, I thought that was really funny too. He's just like drunk at the bar trying to make sense of Thanos and the Infinity Stones. It's like aliens don't like stones. And then when he leaves a little piece of it at the bar, I'm like, oh, that's it.
Which makes no sense, but
yeah, like how did that get left?
I don't, whatever. I am not letting a critical analysis of the thing ruin my entertainment.
Right. I know that in Let There Be Carnage, when Cletus Cassidy bites Eddie Brock's finger, he contracts a piece of the venom, and that's how he became Carnage. But Eddie didn't seem to injure himself or anything at the bar to make any sense of why the piece of the symbiote was left on the bar.
Because movies.
Yeah, the movie, the plot demanded it, as my friend would say. Yes, the plot demanded that Venom. It's like, okay, that's going to be how they're going to get Venom into.
But why not just have symbiotes out in the? I mean, you've got an entire series of films dealing with outer space in the MCU that literally you could introduce the symbiotes through.
Well, but isn't this the end of the association between?
So far, the contract is finished, but given how much money this movie's making right now, I have imagined that we'll renew the contract.
But the entire so the process of the film, when we get to the end of the movie, we do have a situation where no one knows who Peter Parker is. He is taking a GED test.
Mm-hmm.
He is nobody. Spider-Man's still somebody, but Peter Parker, not a guy. And so we're moving forward basically under what I would like to think is Pascal Pictures, because that was plastered all over the place. Oh, Amy.
Well, yeah, because in the Morbius trailer, there's a shot where Morbius is running down the street, and you see all these papers saying that Spider-Man is like a wanted criminal or something on the wall. And then Michael Keaton shows up at the end, and they don't say who he's playing, but everybody just assumed that because they saved that bit for the very end of the trailer, that he's probably the Vulture. But he's still in the MCU universe, and it didn't seem like he crossed over into Sonyverse, so who knows? But I think that movie comes out next month.
I thought he was Batman. That was a lazy joke. Thank you for
apparently when they filmed
he'll be in the Flash as Batman. So
apparently when they filmed that scene in the car in Homecoming, he did say that in one of the lines when he leans over to say Peter. He's like, "I'm Batman."
But all in all, I think that the movie Spider-Man No Way Home was satisfying. Like I really had a good time. I'm trying to poke holes on it and find why I don't like it, but I really liked it. It pushed all my nostalgia buttons, but not in a pandering way. I enjoyed it, and the next thing that I'm going to do as soon as we're done talking about this movie is I'm going to go watch the first Spider-Man again. And then I'm going to watch Amazing Spider-Man 2.
No, you're not.
Maybe.
You're going to want to zoom and do all this over again.
Yeah, probably.
I could probably do a recap now that we've been talking about it. A lot of it's like playing back, and I've been sorting the order in my mind.
Well, if you want to go, now's your time.
No, we're serious. Go.
Serious? Okay, so the film opens replaying the mid-credits teaser from Far From Home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, we're playing that again, and Peter takes MJ, and they're first like hounding her, like, "Oh, are you Spider-Man's girlfriend?" Blah blah blah, and she's like, "What's going on?" And Spider-Man lands on the ground to try and pick her up.
Odd.
Yeah, and this one lady gets like in his face, and he pushes her out of the way. And she's like, "Spider-Man hit me! Spider-Man hit me!" And he takes off with her, and they go to the top of the bridge of whatever bridge it is, and he answers a call from Ned. And all they say to each other is, "Oh my God, oh my God." He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And then MJ's like, "Hello, Peter." And she's like freaking out. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then they go back.
Well, because she's standing on a scaffold, essentially.
Right. So they go back to his house or his apartment, and he's trying to tell. Strangely, he doesn't want to immediately tell Aunt May and Hogan what's going on. He wants to know about their relationship first for some reason. And
that's because Happy Hogan makes it a big deal. He's kind of crying in the hallway.
Yeah, that's right. Because she broke up with him. She's like, "Oh,
they
that's
literally broke up." Yeah,
that's the whole purpose of a summer fling is that they end. And he's like, "Why does it have to end? Why can't it become something else?" And Peter decides to sit them down on the couch and talk to them about their relationship. But the breaking news on the TV interrupts it, and they see what's going on, and all the helicopters are outside, and they're like, "Oh, Peter's with you," and of course he gets arrested. And down at the station, MJ says, "You're not going to talk to anybody without a lawyer," and Aunt May does the funny thing where she's like, "Oh, but with all due respect, with no real sincerity at all," she basically tells him to fuck off in so many words. And then Peter's trying to desperately tell him, "I didn't kill Mysterio. They weren't my drones." It's like, "Oh, with the drones that you own." He's like, just call Nick Fury. He can vouch for me. He's been off world for a year, huh?" And he doesn't really know what to do. And apparently they let him go. They don't immediately charge him with anything, or they did, and he just gets out on bail. So he's back at the house. He doesn't really know what to do.
No, Aunt May actually says, without legitimate charges, you can't hold us here.
That's right, without legitimate charges. So they send him home. There's like a big media hullabaloo about him returning to school for the first time, and half of everybody loves him, half of everybody hates him. He gets to inside the school, and you see that Mr. Dell and his teacher are like totally on board with him, whereas the coach, the Hannibal Buress character, is like, Mysterio was right, and they're like, oh, shut up.
I love that. I love that.
know, and he's like, and he's like, oh, shut up. Look how these students put up this big tribute to Peter. He's like, bitch, you did that.
Oh, he did. I didn't catch that line.
Yeah. No, Hannibal Buress hates Spider-Man. I don't like him and he stinks.
Yeah, they're like, you did that. And it's like, oh, shit. And everybody's just like staring daggers at Peter. And so after school, he ends up back home and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, get the charge dropped. And all of a sudden, without any fanfare whatsoever, you see Matt Murdock just sets his cane down and he sits there and he's like, Peter, this isn't going to be an issue. I can get him to drop all the charges. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, none of this is going to stick. And all of a sudden, this brick comes crashing through the window and he just catches it like that. And it says in green paint on it, Mysterio was right. And Peter kind of looks at him sideways like, how did you do that? And I can't remember what he said.
Very good lawyer.
Yeah, he doesn't really, I can't remember what he said. That's the only scene that he's in the movie, but you do find out that sure enough, all the charges got dropped.
Yes.
And then the next thing.
That's also part of the joke of the movie. And it's like, I don't go around advertising that I'm Spider-Man. It's just not a thing.
Right. And speaking of going around advertising Spider-Man, Flash Thompson has decided to advertise that he's Spider-Man's best friend, and he's written a book about it. And it's like, oh, you motherfucker, because he's and so all this Peter and MJ and Ned and Flash, they're also getting their applications for college, and Peter and MJ are hiding out on a roof somewhere, and they're kind of connecting. And Ned comes to crash their party, and he's like, oh, well, wouldn't it be great if we all lived together? And they're like, yeah, that'd be totally awesome. And then you go into this whole montage of them receiving their rejection letters from all their backup schools, and finally they all meet at MJ's place of work, which is like this bakery. And her boss yells at her, I told you to take down those Halloween decorations a week ago. She's like, yeah. He's like, do it now. It's like, whatever. So the three of them open their letters at the same time, and Ned and MJ specifically say that they were rejected pretty much because of the controversy surrounding Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And that really hits Peter hard, because it's the idea that their futures and everything are ruined because of association with him. And this finally prompts him to like, okay, that's it. So he Flash Thompson shows up in the window as well.
If I may pause you for just one moment.
Yeah.
Remember when Spider-Man was much more concerned about the nature of danger towards his immediate circle, as opposed to the bureaucratic nonsense regarding cancel culture? I'm friends with Spider-Man, and thusly I am canceled. I feel for Ned Leeds.
Yeah. And so Flash Thompson shows up, and he's celebrating because he got into MIT, and he tries to invite them all down to the party. And he's like, you guys didn't get in? And MJ's like, no, unlike you, who are actual friends with Spider-Man got rejected because we are actually friends with him. And he's like, oh, and he just kind of sulks out of there. And Peter just decides this is the final straw. So he goes over to the Sanctum Sanctorum. He walks in the front door, and there's a blizzard going on, or the aftermath of one anyway. And these two people are shuffling the snow. He's like, what's going on? And Wong shows up through one of the doors. And he's like, Strange forgot to cast the spell when we opened the door to one of the Sanctums of Himalayas or whatever that caused a big blizzard. And Steven, I can't remember what Steven says, but he says something to defend himself against it. And so then Peter's like, okay, I need to talk to you, like Mr. And Wong interrupts. He's like, actually, I'm the Sorcerer Supreme now. You can talk to me about this stuff because he got dusted for 5 years and we needed a new Sorcerer Supreme. He's like, oh. And then Steven takes issue with the fact that, you kind of caught it by default. You didn't necessarily kind of poking the bear as if you didn't earn it or something.
Which brings up an interesting question. What year does this movie take place in?
2023, because Far From Home took place 8 months after Endgame, and presumably this is the same calendar year, or early 2024, whatever. Probably.
Okay. So this is still the future.
Yeah, this is still the future. Okay. So
the Marvel universe is always going to be in the future now,
unless
yes, always a couple years in the future. So anyway, Peter asks him to, hey, can you help me? Because and he's like, sir. He's like, Peter, you don't have to call me Sir, Doctor Strange. We saved the world together. I think we're on a first name basis now. He's like, okay, Steven. He's like, oh, that's weird, but I'll allow it. He says, well, what do you need? He says, well, Mysterio kind of screwed up my whole life and everything, and can you kind of make it so that he never did? And can you go back in time so that he didn't do that? And he's like, well, Peter, I don't have the time stone anymore because it's been, destroyed. And Peter's like, oh, yeah. And then the Doctor Strange is like, well, there is one spell, and he names off this, whatever the name of it was, and Wong's like, oh, don't you do that. Don't perform that spell. It's too dangerous. And he's like, hey, don't you remember the big winter bash party we had? He's like, no. He's like, see? Like he's done it before. But he also cautions Peter and says, Peter, this isn't the type of stuff you do just because, your life is a little messy now. He's like, which is kind of odd considering that you just told him that he used it to make people forget having parties that he's not supposed to have. So after Wong leaves going through one of the portals, Steven decides to do it anyway. And this, admittedly, I had a problem with this because, he should probably have counseled Peter because he's a kid. Be aware that if I do this, X, Y, and Z are going to happen. Is that what you want? But he doesn't do that. He just takes him down into the basement. He starts performing this spell. And he's like, all right, the whole world's about to forget that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And he's like,
wait, the whole world?
The whole world? What about MJ? And so Doctor Strange alters the spell.
No, May really needs to know.
Yeah, and then Aunt May needs to know. He tries to alter it again. He's like, well, what about no? First he alters it for MJ, then he alters it for Ned. But once he says Aunt May, that's where he really loses it. And he's like, Strange, like, stop talking, you're fucking it up. And there's like this weird multiversal.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
Yeah, and there's this weird multiversal type of explosion, but Doctor Strange contains it in this weird box, and he says, and Peter's like, did it screw up? He's like, no, I managed to contain it, but you can't. You stop fucking with the spell, and you're lucky that it didn't get any worse. And it's like, what is this all about? And for some reason, Peter at that moment blurts out the fact that they got rejected. His friends got rejected to MIT because of him. He's like, well, did you file your appeal? He's like, well, what do you mean? It was like, you can always file the appeal with the school. And it's like, really? He's like, you mean to tell me you just had me alter reality because you didn't bother, and you didn't even bother checking with the school first? And Peter's like, and then
okay, so this is the moment where I was on board with the movie because it actually was like a Spider-Man comic book. Like that was the elder statesman saying to Peter, being like, wait, hang on.
Right. And then he gets kind of mad at him, but then he stops himself and says sorry because I keep forgetting that you're just a kid. And
exactly.
And we found out about the MIT thing, and that's when he just throws him out, which didn't seem like the best idea at the time. But Dr. Strange thought that everything was under control. So Peter's lost. He's like, oh, God, what am I going to do now? So he gets an idea, and he calls Flash because Flash got into MIT. He's like, Flash, I'll take you to school every day for a week as Spider-Man if you tell me where the MIT administrator is. Because first he called him trying to find out where he was. He's like, he's on the way to the airport. And Flash is like, I'll do it for you if you take me to school for a month. And he's like, no, 2 weeks, a week. And Flash is like, oh, okay. So he tells him that he's on that the administrator's on her way to the airport. You can catch her. So Peter takes off and makes it to this bridge. I can't remember the name of it. It's like on the freeway. And he's scanning the crowd. He's looking at all these cars. Little kids are mentioning, "Hey, look, it's Spider-Man!" And he's like in a nice business suit type thing. And he ends up finding the administrator, and he just totally botches the ask. And she could tell. It's like, you didn't rehearse this, did you? And he's like, no. And all of a sudden, you feel that like this earthquake, as if like a T-Rex is coming or something. And instead, we have that moment from the trailer in which Doc Ock comes up through the bridge onto the overpass or whatever, and he's like, hello, Peter. And Peter's got his nanotech suit on.
Now this is where I sort of get a little bit shaky. At this point, there is no motivation for
because he
anything. Right, he's literally just dropping parsley on top of a plate.
Well, he does, but he also tells him when he first confronts him, he's like, what'd you do with my machine? Like, what he thinks for some reason that he's taken it, and he's mad at him. But you're right. It is a little weird that he doesn't seem to be acknowledging the weirdness that you just suddenly got transported from the dock house to.
He's not even where am I? It's just like I must kill the queen. Yeah, it's like Reggie Jackson from Naked Gun.
Right, you took my machine and blah blah blah. So they get in this little fight that is that goes over. He ends up knocking the car with the administrator over the overpass.
Oh, and also the action sequences are incredible. Like the fight scenes are great.
Spider-Man uses the webs to catch the car, but then Doc Ock comes after him and grabs him and smashes him against one of the support posts. And when Peter takes off his mask and Doc realizes that it's not him, this catches him off guard for a second, and Peter infects the tentacles with the nanotech. Which
can we just say how great it was that he was pairing the Bluetooth
Yes.
And it was like pairing Bluetooth or whatever.
Yeah. No, that was a really funny joke.
And so now Peter has control.
Well, but that's the thing with Spider-Man and Doc Ock is that Spider-Man, part of the reason that Doc Ock doesn't like Spider-Man is because Spider-Man is smarter than Doc Ock. Like that's
Otto Octavius is a really brilliant man. So
exactly. That's why they built up the relationship in Spider-Man 2 is that they were kindred intellects. And now it was nice to see that sort of updated to the 21st century. Like this is kind of the Doc Ock that I like. I fell in love with Alfred Molina as Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, but I fell in love again. Like such a wow. I love Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I want a full body pillow.
So he infects the thing with the nanotechnology. It pairs the Bluetooth. He has control of it. And so he starts using Doc like a puppeteer to save the MIT administrator whose car is still dangling over the overpass. Then he gets him back on the overpass, ties him up in his own tentacles, and tries to like, who are you? Why the hell are you here doing this? And he's like, oh, you're not Peter. What'd you do with my machine? And blah, blah, blah. And before they get very far at establishing who each other is, suddenly the Green Goblin shows up. And Otto immediately recognizes him as Norman for some reason. And
which I'm fine with. You're such a stickler.
I know, it makes sense. So he Peter's like, who's Norman Osborn? And he's like, oh, Otto's like, he's a brilliant scientist. And but then the bombs go off, and you think a big fight scene's about to start, but instead Peter and Doc Ock, I don't know why he didn't get Goblin at the same time as well, but it was only those two who get transported back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. It was Doc Ock trapped in a cell, and we see the Lizard in another cell, and Doctor Strange talks about how shortly after he left, he sensed this multiversal disturbance or whatever, that he went into the sewers and found the Lizard. And of course, and he's like, you need to go get your friends. I can't believe I'm saying this. Go get them. And Doctor Strange is so annoyed to have to bring Ned, of all people, into the Sanctum Sanctorum. And
I can't believe you're here. I can't either.
Yeah, Ned said, I can't remember what Ned said. He said something funny to him when he first walks in. But they go downstairs into the basement. They see where these guys are, and and of course Ned immediately thinks that the Lizard's a dinosaur, and he can't believe it. And once the dinosaur starts talking, he's like, oh my God, it could talk. And Doctor Strange explains to Peter that once this spell was performed, all the people from the various realities who knew Peter was Spider-Man have been transported here. These are two of them. You need to go get the rest and team with your friends to find them. And he says you could work in, he gave this cool name for it, like some dungeon type place. And instead it's just like this regular basement with like, kind of like a garage, everything you'd expect to find in a garage. And Ned thinks it's so cool, and they set up their laptop and they get to work trying to find where these other villains are. And I can't remember exactly how they locate Electro, but they do. They locate him at a power grid.
Oh, Jamie Foxx! I completely forgot about Jamie Foxx. He's amazing.
Yeah, so Peter goes there in his Spider-Man suit. He's got like a little webcam on, so Ned and MJ can watch from the laptop. And he arrives in the forest. He's trying to figure out what's going on, and we see Electro there. And it's not like super blue like he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
No, but he was blue because they do make a reference. It's like, is that the guy from the bridge? No, that guy was green. This guy is blue.
That's right. So he's there, and we see some sand billowing in the background, and we realize, oh shit, the Sandman's here. And interestingly enough, when Peter uses the device that Doctor Strange gave him that allows him to automatically transport these people to their cells, he shoots it at Electro and just bounces right off him and hits a tree, and this tree is transported straight into one of the cells. And Ned will later comment, is that a tree person? Or is that person who turns into a tree? Which is kind of funny. And then Sandman suddenly saves Peter's life because he thinks it's the same Peter from his universe whom he,
I don't want to stray too far away, but I don't think that when Ned does that question joke, I don't think Peter's in the room, because I think it would have been really funny if it's like, he is Groot.
Yeah, that would have been funny. You're right. That would have been a great place for that joke. So Sandman protects Peter, and Peter doesn't know why he's helping him, but he's like, okay, let's team up to try and stop him. And so there's like a big action scene, and eventually they do get him. I can't remember exactly what he did, but he got sucked him off the power. Oh, that's right. Peter destroys the power grid while Sandman performs this like cyclone around him to maintain Electro. And once the power grid fails, they get Electro some for some reason there's like a shed there with a bunch of like firemen's clothes for some reason, and he puts on the clothes. He's like in Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, no, but they have like a conversation at this point, and it's just like, what are we gonna do? Let's all go to the mall.
Yeah, so he puts on the fireman's outfit, and Spider-Man, transports him to the cell, and then Sandman, upon realizing that this finally, this is not, you're not Peter Parker. It's like, what the hell is this about? And he's about to get hostile with him, so then Peter zaps him with the sending him to the cell as well. So then Peter goes back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, and he meets with Ned and MJ, and he's talking with these villains finally, and Otto's able to tell him that Otto's not able, actually no, because the Goblin isn't here yet, so he's not able to tell him exactly who the rest of these people are, but Electro or whatever recognizes Dr. Connors. And then Connors starts talking to him in his lizard form. Sure. He's like, oh, yes. Yeah, how are you doing, Max? I used to work here, at Oscorp or whatever, and they're talking, and that's when Ned's like, oh my God, the dinosaur can talk, and they're going back and forth about this.
I did appreciate that they actually acknowledged that within their own universes, they knew who each other were. I liked that. And I know it's a bone of contention for yourself regarding Otto knowing Norman. But
no, I get that Otto knows Norman. That's entirely understandable. I just don't get why he knew Norman was the Goblin.
Okay, fair enough. But I just I like that camaraderie within their own universes being brought into this universe. It's great.
Yes. So then Peter, they decide they got to figure out what they're going to do, and he suddenly gets a phone call from Aunt May, and she's like, "Oh, the one of these people's here that you're looking for." She had already called him and told him what was going on, and he's like, "Oh, okay." So Peter races down to it's Feast. It's called like FEAST. It's like an acronym. It's like a homeless shelter type thing, and Aunt May's there, and Norman's sitting there, and he's kind of lost and distraught. He doesn't know what's going on. And he agrees to go with Peter back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. And when he goes into the basement, he sees Otto, and they recognize each other. And he's like, "Oh, Otto." He's like, "Octavius." He's like, "Norman." And they're kind of having this moment. And then all of a sudden, Doctor Strange shows up. He's like, "Oh, good, you got another one." And then he just zaps him right into his cell. And then he gets out the box, which has the contained spell. And Peter's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Peter, all these people need to be sent back to where they came from." He's like, "Well, what?" And because Peter's been talking to these people, he realizes that some of them have died at Spider-Man's hands, or some of them are about to die. And Peter doesn't like this idea that sending them back is potentially going to kill all of them or result in horrible things happening, because they seem like...
Let me stop you right there. No one has died at Spider-Man's hands. Well, except for Gwen Stacy.
When Spider-Man was there, yes, they did die while Spider-Man was there fighting Spider-Man. And
he was present.
Yeah, they were fighting, but they died fighting Spider-Man, or some of them did anyway.
They died fighting Spider-Man, but Spider-Man didn't kill the Green Goblin. Right, so Spider-Man didn't kill Dr. Octopus.
Talking, and Doctor Strange wants to send all these people back, and Peter's, having talked to them a bit, realizes that, hey, maybe we can help them and cure them of some of their problems. And Doctor Strange is like, no, that's not our problem, Peter. They need to go back to their universes, otherwise the consequences are horrible. And Peter finally he says, oh, come on, Strange, have a heart. And he says, when it comes to, whatever the line is, like preserving reality or whatever, heart doesn't matter or something like that. And Peter feels that's so cold. So he uses his webs and just grabs the box from him, takes off outside the Sanctum Sanctorum. Doctor Strange comes out to fight him, and they go and takes him into the mirror dimension. And they have a pretty grand fight through the city and through the Grand Canyon. And eventually Peter ends up snatching the box from him and escaping the mirror dimension, leaving Doctor Strange trapped there.
Through the power of geometry.
Yes, through the power of geometry, Peter figured out how to stop him. So Doctor Strange is trapped in the mirror dimension while Peter has the box, and he goes back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. He gives the box to MJ and Ned and says, don't press the button, only if I tell you. And they're like, okay. And he says, look, we got to get you guys out of these cells, because who knows when Doctor Strange is going to show up again. He's like, okay. So he lets them out of the cells. They all go to Happy Hogan's apartment, because there's where this assembly kit Stark technology is being stored there. A Lizard, for some reason, decides he doesn't want to go inside, probably because I'm not sure why, but he decides to stay in the van. And meanwhile, one of Jonah Jameson's, because he's been reporting on this quite a lot, and as a result of that, his broadcast has gotten so popular that instead of broadcasting out of his living room, he now has a whole studio. He's got agents and all this kind of stuff. So they track Spider-Man to Hogan's apartment, and they are parked outside in their news van waiting for something to happen. I think one of
we already seen the sleep apnea hose?
I
love that moment.
the sleep. I can't remember what point in the movie that was, but you're right. He's sleeping. Hogan's sleeping in the chair with the CPAP machine, and then he thinks he's asleep the whole time, but it turns out he was awake. He's like, "What? You would listen to all that?" He's like, "Not by choice," which is pretty funny. So anyway, the villains all get inside the apartment, and Peter gets out the assembly technology. Norman's really fascinated, and the first thing they decide to do is make a new inhibitor chip for Doc Ock. And Norman's like, "Dang, kid, if you don't mind traveling between the universes, there's a job for you at Oscorp." And he's like excited about that. So then Peter, who's still in control of Doc Ock's tentacles, decides he's going to experiment on him first. And Doc Ock is like really upset and kind of being really fussy. He doesn't think this going here was a good idea to begin with. But Peter, with the nanotechnology, is able to control him, and he applies the new inhibitor chip. And at first, it seems like it killed him. Like I'm like, oh shit, did he kill him? And Peter's like, oh shit. And then after a bit, he wakes up and he's back to normal. And so Peter takes away the nanotechnology, unpairs the nanotech from the tentacles, and Doc Ock like shakes hands with him. He's happy that, oh my boy, you saved me. And so then Peter gets this neat device that he puts on Max Dillon, which apparently sucks the electricity out of him or something, like a reverse arc reactor. And it's like a thing which takes quite a while, and you're watching the lights light up, and Max is sitting there thinking about it, and he's staring out the window, and he's like, man, this place is the city and everything's so great. And it's like, what, the apartment? He's like, oh yeah, the apartment's great. No, you idiot, the city is. Like, look at all the power of the city. And you can tell he's second guessing whether or not he wants to let this thing keep ticking. And so Peter's in the other room working on another trick, probably for Sandman or Goblin or whichever. I think it was Goblin's the one he was working on next. And Max is sitting there. He's losing patience. He's thinking about it. And Aunt May has since shown up and is helping Peter. And all of a sudden, Peter starts getting his spidey senses kicking in. He noticed something's going to happen. He doesn't know what it is. And he tells Aunt May to get out. So she takes the piece of the formula for the Goblin and the sand, puts it in like this bag, and she takes off. And first she tries to take the elevator, but it's not coming fast enough. So she starts running down the stairs. And Norman is the one who finally snaps, and he's like in his Goblin persona now. He's like, oh, you really think I was going to sit here and let this happen and watch destroy this and all that kind of shit? And so he, did he use one of his, no, that's right. Electro agrees with him. He's like, yeah, you're right. And so he rips the reverse arc reactor thing off his chest so he can have his electrical powers, and blows a hole in the thing. Doc Ock tries to stop him and grabs it and gets thrown out the building. And Jameson sees this action happening. He's like, oh, there it is. Film it. And Doc Ock ends up just running away like hell. And Sandman.
As Doc Ock does.
Yes, and Sandman and Electro flee. And Norman apparently gets the pieces of his suit because he had been in it. That's right, because after his attack on the bridge, he had gone into an alley, and when he had, because he goes back and forth between the Goblin and Norman personality, and he had destroyed the mask from his flight suit and had left the glider like in the garbage. He like left it there.
There's an interesting character development that I think carries over from the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. Is there's something that Norman Osborn keeps taunting Peter with, and he says it like at least twice. You are strong enough to have everything, but too weak to have everything. Like something along those lines. And I really, it was such a delight to see Willem Dafoe back. And it was so villainous. And I thought that the Green Goblin was expertly written this time. Like, even as a villain that comes out of nowhere. Like, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is Khan.
Yeah. So Aunt May runs back down to the hotel lobby, and then Goblin shows up with his glider, like blasts a hole in the lobby, and there's all this rubble and everything. And he's like taunting Peter again, and he looks more like his accurate Goblin persona with the torn sweater and the goggles on. And Peter doesn't really want to hear any of it, and Goblin throws one of his pumpkin grenades. And
bombs. They're bombs.
And bombs, whatever. He jumps in to try and intercept it, and the explosion goes off. Goblin takes off, and Peter is seeing Aunt May as she's dying, and she says that even though the consequences are what they are, it was still the right call to make. That you didn't do anything wrong. And she tells him that, with great power comes great responsibility.
And this is where I started crying for the rest of the movie.
Yes, and then Hogan arrives, and he sees her dying. And the police are kind of distracted. He's kind of maybe buying time for Peter. he gets arrested, and then Aunt May dies, and Peter actually gets shot at by some of the SWAT guys and takes off. We then finally cut back to Ned and MJ, who've gone to Ned's house with his grandma, or his grandma's house, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And Ned had been given Doctor Strange's sling ring by Peter, who stole it from him in the mirror dimension. And they're sitting there thinking, "Oh, what are we gonna do? We gotta." And he's like, "Oh, I wish we knew where Peter was or whatever." And he flings his finger, and it starts doing the sling ring thing. And MJ's like, "What? Do that again?" And he's like, and he practices a bit. He's like, bring us to Peter Parker, or bring Peter Parker to us, or whatever." He does a little sling, and it opens up, and you see an alley, and they see Spider-Man there. He's like, "Come on, come on!" And so Spider-Man runs, and he jumps in, but it's lo and behold the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. And at first, they don't really like Ned and MJ are questioning.
Andrew Garfield is in this movie,
and they're questioning whether or not it's him. And they're like, "Crawl on the ceiling." He's like, "What?" He's like, "Crawl on the ceiling." I do it, and he doesn't want to, so he just uses his hand to grab the ceiling. And then
that was a delightful thing, and it's like, prove you're Spider-Man,
right?
And he does that, and then Michelle is like, no, that's not enough. Crawl around.
And he's like, "Crawl around." He's like, "No." And then Ned's grandma comes to the room and says something, and Ned's like, "Oh, she wants you to if you can get that cobweb up in the corner because you're just hanging around there." He's like, "Okay." So then he crawls on the ceiling, gets the cobweb, and they realize, "Oh shit, you're from another universe." And then like, "Oh, you're not the real Peter. We need to find him again." And Peter's like, "Ouch!"
But also in terms of a filmmaking perspective, like I enjoy wall crawling, and I feel like that's when I finally connect with the character. And seeing like that was Andrew Garfield, in whatever special effect he was wall crawling, he was doing the physical motion, and that's amazing. It's the same way that I felt when I watched the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, when it was Tobey Maguire.
Speaking of Tobey Maguire, the Ned is like, "Oh man, you're not the real Peter Parker," and Peter's like, "Ouch," and MJ's, "Come on, do it again." So he opens another sling ring, and all of a sudden, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is there. Except unlike all the other characters who were the same age they were from the climaxes of their movies when they got transported, Tobey's like 18 years older and definitely the more mature of them. And
no de-aging.
He's like, I'm sorry, I walked in, and he looks behind him, and he realizes that he's like in somebody's house and that something weird happened. And Ned and MJ are trying to explain him to them both, and they're like, "What? There's magic in this unit? Magic is real. The multiverse is real." And Garfield Spider-Man is freaking out about it. And then when Ned mentions he's got them like the magic occurring like a wizard, like, "Oh, there's magic too." They're getting a little excited about it. And presumably in a cutscene they probably explain everything to them. We gotta find Peter. And they're like, "Well, where would Peter go?" And Garfield's Peter's like, "Empire State Building, better view." And Toby's Peter's like, "Oh, Chrysler Building, it's got a great view as well." And MJ's thinking, she's like, "Oh, I know where he would go." And so they find Peter. I can't remember what the building is or
exactly. That's the problem. I don't know where they went.
I think it's the roof. It's supposed to be the same rooftop that they were at earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
When he and MJ were lying on the roof, like reading the magazine. And
I think it's the roof of the school.
Okay.
Oh, probably the school.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So they go there, and Peter's absolutely devastated. MJ and Ned console him, and then the two other they're like, "We brought some people with us." And he looks up, and he sees these two other Spider-Man. And at first, he gets in a defensive position. They're like, "Oh, no, it's okay." And they're trying to talk to him about it. And he's like, "Oh, don't pretend like you know what I'm going through." It's like, "Oh, actually, we do." And he's talking about Aunt May's death. And as she said, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's when they mentioned the fact that the Uncle Ben situation about how, and they start going through their own.
The Uncle Ben situation, if I may interrupt for you for just one moment. The thing is that none of these, the chemistry and the charisma between these three actors, there is no feeling of competition.
Right.
It is absolutely camaraderie. Yep. And I adored it. Seeing three Peters together and being like, "Hey, Pete, what's up? What are we doing?" That was, my heart grew 3 sizes today.
Yeah. And eventually, and they're like, so Toby's Peter mentions his Uncle Ben and how he got him killed. And Garfield, he alludes to that, but what he mentions really is Gwen Stacy. And they're like, "Huh?" And he's like, "She's my MJ." And how he doesn't bring himself to fully say it, but they get it. And so they're really bonding over this. And particularly when Peter said the great power, great responsibility line, they're like, "Yeah, that's Uncle Ben. He said that the day he died." And so that's really what brings them all together. And so then we cut to.
I do love the fact that Marissa Tomei, like I really appreciate that Aunt May is Uncle Ben in the MCU. Like this movie, like my biggest complaint about any of these movies for the longest time has been like, where's Uncle Ben?
Tony Stark was his Uncle Ben. That's how they played
Fuck that noise. I'm sorry for swearing, but no. I really appreciate that this movie was the one that was like, no, Aunt May is Uncle Ben. Aunt May has always been Uncle Ben.
Well, the whole Far From Home is about Peter trying to get over Tony and him being because that's kind of, they try.
Yeah, but I don't like that. I don't like it.
Okay, but I'm just saying that's what it is. So
yeah, it is what it is, and that's why I don't like it.
So then they go into the school like chemistry lab, and the three of them are trying to work on cures for everybody. And Garfield's like, "Oh yeah, I got Connors covered. I cured him once before. I could do it again."
Yeah, that was great.
And admittedly, it is a little contrived how they're able to just magically come up with cures for everybody, like Sandman and Green Goblin. It's like, wait,
because movie.
Yeah, I know. But in a high school chemistry lab, really?
Sure, why not? You know what? I really appreciated seeing all three of the Peters doing science.
Yeah,
they looked like they were actually doing science. It was great.
Yeah, and Ned's like, "Oh, Peter," and they're all like, "Oh, Peter, what? Oh, Peter," doing that little joke, and he's like, "Oh,
that was funny." Yeah, no, we're all Peter Parker.
Like, oh,
Peter.
But he's like, okay.
Which one? Peter Parker. No, same thing.
So from there, they decide that they're gonna have to come up with a plan to lure.
Hold on. You forgot about a key scene.
Oh, what did I forget? What did Kat forget?
What did Kat forget? It's when it's unveiled that Ned starts asking Toby and Andrew if they have best friends.
Oh, yeah.
And Toby says he did, and he died in my arms.
After trying to kill him.
And that if you're a comic reader, Ned Leeds has a very different story than,
Right.
So it kind of sets up that whole what could Ned become to Tom Holland's Peter in the future. And I thought that was a very interesting little few moments of dialogue.
Well, and we make fun about Ned being able to do portals, but like he does make mention very explicitly, now that I have these powers, I'm not going to be a supervillain and try and kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where they have the joke when they realize that Toby's Peter could shoot webs like organically, and the other Peters just start geeking out about that, and they're like, "Oh God, that's so gross, but it's also so interesting," and oh, that is amazing. And
Peter's but that's the thing. Like, it's not an awkward comedy situation. It is an absolute conversation of trust, which, you know what, I enjoyed seeing. And it was like they explain themselves throughout a funny scene. It's not like, well, I don't want to say this. It's like, no, come on, we're all scientists. Don't you think that we would be interested? And Toby's like, no, I get it, but it's kind of personal. And they all banter. They banter.
Right. So then Ned opens the sling ring for Peter to go to the Statue of Liberty, and he starts talking with Jameson live on Jameson's show, and Jameson, of course, is being very confrontational, and he says, "Oh, this is a message. Maybe if certain people are watching, you can come greet me here at the place where that's all about second chances." And he's at the Statue of Liberty, which is in the process of being renovated to have Captain America's shield added on top of it.
It seems blasphemous. I don't think that Lady Liberty needs a fucking Captain America shield or an Iron Man shield.
So, and then Jameson's like, he hangs up on him, and then he's talking to the other two Spider-Men, and that's where they start bonding some more, talking about. And he's like, "Hey, how many supervillains have you fought?" They're like, a couple, and they start going over that a bit, and then they mention the thing about the back injury, and it's like, "Oh, thanks, that's kind of, can you crack?" And Toby tells Garfield, "Can you crack my back?" And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he does that.
It was a great moment.
Was that the same scene though when they talk about, and I've been out to space, and they're like,
"Yeah,
you were out in space," and then aliens, that all comes up briefly.
Yeah. No, but okay. So the beautiful part about that is that it's Tom Holland, and he's like, okay, so I've fought an alien on Earth and in space. Oh. Toby says, well, I've only fought an alien on Earth, and then Andrew's like, I haven't even fought an alien.
I really want to fight an alien now.
I really want to fight an alien.
So then their actual enemies show up: Electro, Sandman, and Lizard. And then you have the moment everybody's been waiting for. The three Spider-Men go at it, and it doesn't go very well at first, and they regroup on one of the scaffoldings, and Peter's like, come on, we got to coordinate. What's going on? It's like, like I did when I was with the Avengers. And I'm like, huh? It's like, the Avengers. It's like, and Toby's like, great. Who are they? Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Wait, you don't have that? And Garfield's like, what? Is that a band? Were you in a band? And they go back and forth. It's like, okay. It's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is, I've been in a group scenario like this. I know how to run point on this. So like, okay, what are we gonna call ourselves? We're all Peter. He's like, I'll be Peter. Tom Holland's like, I'll be Peter 1. And he turns to Toby, you'll be Peter 2, and you're Peter 3. And they're like, oh, okay. So then they take off and start again, and they're doing a much better job fighting. But meanwhile, Ned is having a hard time figuring out how to close the sling ring. So the portal is still open to the. I think they're back in the basement of Doctor Strange's place, or they're still in the chemistry lab. I can't remember.
They're in the lab. They're in the lab.
Yeah, so they're in the lab, and he's trying to figure out how to close it, and he's like, oh shit, he can't figure out. So they're trying to. Then the fight continues, and Garfield's like, yeah, I know I said I could deal with Electro, but he's more powerful now because he's gotten a hold of one of Tony's arc reactors, and he looks much more comic book accurate version of Electro, and they're like, oh well, we'll figure this out, blah blah blah. So they start trying to figure out how they're going to stop this, and then out of the blue, Doc Ock arrives, and first he starts grabbing the three Spider-Men and restraining them, and then he grabs onto Max Dillon, and Max thinks, oh, he's going to help me, and instead Doc Ock pries the arc reactor off of Max's chest, and then he releases the three Spider-Men, so it's like, oh, cool, he's going to help them, and then with Peter 1, I should say, running point, Peter 1 cures Kurt Connors by injecting him with the anti-lizard serum or whatever, and then Peter 2 saves Sandman again, Flint Marko, by injecting him with the anti-Sandman thing, and he tells Flint just to stay put, you'll be fine. And finally, Ned, in his struggles to try and figure out how to close the sling ring, ends up accidentally rescuing Doctor Strange from the mirror dimension. And I guess
conveniently.
Yeah, I should have mentioned at one point during the fight that Lizard did run through the portal and try and kill them, and that's how they got chased out onto the scaffolding. So he conveniently opens the portal, and Doctor Strange shows up, and they're like, oh, wait, Mr. Strange, you should stop. Look, Peter's doing it. He's saving them. And when he sees that they're being saved, he's like genuinely surprised and kind of like, oh, wow, he actually did it. But then when he sees all three Peters alongside each other, Peter 1 is trying to introduce them. He's like, oh, this is Peter, and this is the other Peter. And Doctor Strange's like, oh, that's it. I've had enough of this. And he gets the box out, and he's about to hit the button when Green Goblin shows up and snatches it away. And so the fight continues. And at one point in the fight, MJ falls off the scaffolding. Peter 1, Tom Holland, dives for her, and does not catch her because Green Goblin swoops by on his glider and knocks him out of the way. And that's when Peter 3, Andrew Garfield, dives for her, catches her, lands, and he's like crying, and he's super emotional about it. And because she had already heard him mention that, he failed to save Gwen, that's like a really great moment and real payoff there. Peter, meanwhile,
he catches her and says, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And like that was, and this is part of the credit that I give to Zendaya about her performance as Michelle in this movie, is that she looks at him and like he says, "Are you okay?" And he's so happy that he caught her.
Yeah.
He's so happy he saved her.
Yes.
And then no, I'm not done. And then Zendaya is like, yeah, are you okay? And he's like, and I hate to say the term slough off, but he just sort of like, he does a thing, and it's like, no, I'm good. And it makes me just thinking about it, I'm gonna Kevin Smith all over it. But it is an emotional scene that I think both actors absolutely drive home. If you know what Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Gwen Stacy are. But
and then you have that followed up with another nice moment where Doc Ock greets Peter 1, and Peter takes his mask off and he sees it. He's like, my God, Peter, you're all grown up. And they have like this nice moment with each other while Holland's Peter is still being, taken away by the Goblin's glider, which eventually crashes onto Captain America's busted shield. The shield statue in the water, and it's now dawn, and Peter and Goblin's just taunting Peter viciously. He's like, it was really your fault that Aunt May dies.
Oh, that was vicious.
That was vicious. He's like, haha, it's your fault. And Peter just starts punching the hell out of him. And the other two Peters.
I may have done the death blow, but you were the one who put her in harm's way.
Yeah.
You killed her.
And then
oh my God.
Yeah, and the other two Peters come down and they kind of look at each other because they see what Peter's doing. They're like, we should probably do something about this. And after Peter punches Norman senseless just about, he picks up his glider and is about to kill him with it, and Toby catches it. And stops him from it.
Amazing.
And it's like they have this real, like, stare-off sort of thing, like, really vicious moment. And then Goblin stabs Toby in the back. And at first I thought it was going to be really bad, like he was going to die. Peter drops.
I was hoping he died.
Yeah, I thought that would have really put it home, kind of, because that would be.
It would have added heft.
Yeah, because that's kind of like how in Spider-Man 3 when Harry ends up jumping in the way to save Peter from Venom, and he takes the blow. And in this case, it's Toby trying to save Peter from himself, and at the expense of being.
But also, like we've done this before as well. Like, don't forget. Remember when Thanos stabbed Tony?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh no, he's dead. Oh no, he's not.
Yeah.
So we've had this before.
Yes. So Toby or Andrew at that point shouts to Peter, and he throws the vial of the antidote for Goblin, and Tollins Peter catches it and injects him right in the neck, and then Norman immediately snaps out of it, and he's like, oh my God, what did I do? And Norman just kind of sits there shell-shocked for the rest of it while we find out that Toby's Peter's going to be okay. He's like, oh, I've been stabbed before. It's not a big deal. And then Ned and MJ run down there, and Peter sees that they're all right, and they embrace. But then Doctor Strange, meanwhile, they look up, and they see that he's dealing with something at the top of the Statue of Liberty as the multiverse is starting to be ripped open.
From what I understand, the entire sky is breaking open, and a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of universes are trying to get to Peter Parker.
I thought that this was the tie-in to the Loki series.
So did I, because the visuals are they're keeping a consistent visual language of that multiversal cracking.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so Peter races up to the top of the Statue of Liberty, and he's like, what's going on? And he's like, I can't stop it. All these people are coming in for these multiverse, everybody. And Peter's like, wait, well, what if you go back and perform the original spell? And he's like, no, not now, Peter. Like, no, what if you do it so that nobody ever remembers me as Spider-Man or remembers you, period? And Strange is like, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, you have to do that.
You have to do that.
And he says, well, then which again, I'm going to have to see it again to remember the exact dialogue to figure out what the logic was.
Me too.
So he's like, well, you only got a few minutes, kids. So you better go say your goodbyes. So he first goes down to the two other Spider-Men, and they have a really great heart-to-heart, like you mentioned, camaraderie, great moment where they say goodbye to each other. He then goes to Ned and MJ and says goodbye to them, but promises, or MJ makes him promise that you're going to come find me once we figure you're going to come track us down. He's like, don't worry, I will. And then he and Ned have a really, because really, you think about it, the timeline aside, Peter's only really been great friends with MJ for like a year. Because he got snapped because he met her in like Homecoming 2017. He gets snapped in 2018, and then this is 8 months later. So like a year and a half almost that he's been with her. So it's
what's really.
Whereas with Ned,
was MJ snapped? Was she blipped?
Yeah, because they're all the same age still. So
makes sense.
And so Ned, on the other hand, he's known for years, like his best friend, and that's like a really sad goodbye. And then Doctor Strange finally performs the trick. The multiverse is repaired. All the other characters disappear to their respective universes, and the two Peters kind of wave to each other, casually waving goodbye. And then Peter just kind of, next time we see him, he's let's see, does he go to his apartment first, or he goes to the graveyard first, I think.
Yes.
So he goes to the graveyard to lay flowers at Aunt May's grave, and as if they haven't hit us hard enough in the fields, Hogan walks up beside him, and he's like, how did you know her? And that's the first time I really clicked and understood that they don't, like, nobody even knows who Peter Parker is. Like, he doesn't even technically exist anymore. And
I knew that right away.
And he's like, I knew her.
One more day.
I have to read that one. And so he's like, I knew her. He says, I knew her through Spider-Man. He's like, oh, so did I. And they have like this great, like, heart-to-heart moment, see you around, kid type of thing. And then Peter decides to try and track down MJ and Ned. And he does, and he finds MJ back at the coffee shop, and Ned walks in. He goes in there. He's like, we see that he's got a note. Like he's written this really long, like almost like an essay of something that he wants to say. But before he gets a chance to, he's like, I'm Peter Parker. She's like, okay, Peter Parker. He's like, I'll have a coffee. He's like, she's like, okay. And first she grabs like a donut or a toffee treat for Ned. And we find out that they both got into MIT. They're opening.
Oh, no. The guy at the counter that Michelle is serving, I believe that is Robert Paulson, the voice actor for Yakko Warner.
Now, I was told through, and I can't remember where I read it. It was Nicholas Hammond. It's an uncredited Nicholas Hammond, and the person who said it, he was like, the only reason I recognized him was because apparently he was in Tarantino's last film as a director. Yeah. He had a bit part. And he's like, it's the same guy. It's Nicholas Hammond. That's what I heard or read over the last 2 days.
We have no responsibility to the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
She got that for Ned because Ned had come in and sat at the counter and she grabbed something and gave him the treat.
But there's an old man, and I thought it was Robert Paulson. But
I didn't think it looked like Rob Paulson, but
so anyway,
I thought it did. Anyway, moving on.
So they're opening their MIT acceptance letters. They're happy, and Peter sees that MJ has a Band-Aid on her head, and he asks her if she's okay. She says yes, and he can't really bring himself to read whatever this essay is that he wrote. He thinks better of it because
he can't bring himself to tell the truth.
He can't bring himself to tell the truth because he's like, oh, they're going to college, they're moving on with their lives, and she got injured because of me, and it almost was a hell of a lot worse. Like she almost died, and it's that whole thing about putting people in danger, even though Norman was dick when he said
it. Something about having great power, and then the responsibility that comes with it.
And even though Norman was being a dick when he said it, that it's your fault, he still, in a sense, feels responsible for it. So he's not going to greet them after all. And he leaves with his coffee. And
Norman Osborn has always been a father figure to Peter Parker.
So Peter shows up at this new apartment. He's like, rent's due at the first of every month, and he's just in here with nothing but like one box of stuff. And he's like, lost, like, what am I going to do now, type of thing. But then we see that there's like a cut, and we see his sewing machine, and he's stitched together like a comic accurate original Spider-Man outfit, and he sneaks out the window and starts swinging through the city around Christmas time. And that's the end of the main film, whereas the mid-credit scene shows Eddie Brock is still in Mexico. He's at the bar, and this is a pickup from the post-credit scene of Venom 2, where he was in
Electric Boogaloo?
Right, he was on the beach because he needed to get away from everything. His cover was blown, all that, and so when the multiverse thing ripped open, he got transported into somebody else's hotel room, and the TV was playing while Jameson was revealing his big breaking news story that it's Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and Venom took an interest in that. Like this guy, and so Eddie's sitting at the bar, and this guy the bartender's been telling him all about Thanos and the snap and how he lost his family for 5 years, and Eddie's totally drunk and he can't figure out what it is, and Venom's keep making these derogatory comments about it, and then all of a sudden, right as he makes the decision that we're going to go track down this spider guy or whatever, he starts disappearing back into his own timeline because of Doctor Strange's spell, and then the camera pans down to the bar, and we see that a piece of the alien symbiote has been left behind, and then
we get to in the interim. We get to see a whole bunch of special effects artists credits. I think
we get to see everybody. All tons
don't take a nap.
I'm not taking a nap. I'm just
the artistic
talent. It was beautifully animated end credits.
It was.
I didn't like the end song. I thought the end song was.
I'm going to have to go back and watch it again, but I don't remember seeing Thomas Hayden Church's name in the main animated credits at the beginning.
No, I did not either.
I did see him in the rolling credits.
In the roll.
Okay.
I was looking for Rice Ivans, and I didn't find him.
Oh, I thought that was listed in the main animated credits as well. Maybe not. I'll have to check again. Anyway, so, and then the post-credit scene is actually just the trailer for Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness.
Well, you know what? I, for one, welcome Wanda. Any Wanda I can get, I love that. Absolutely.
She's amazing.
I cannot wait for more Wanda.
I can pass on her.
Well, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
So how many web cartridges? And I would like you to consider the rest of the Spider-Man cinematic oeuvre. But like how, based on Spider-Man movies, Where is this on a scale from 1 to 10?
9. You got 9 webs.
I'll give it 8. I'll give it 8 webs. Nolodoc?
Did you? Oh, I hate giving numbers to things.
I know.
I've changed the way I view movies, so I don't like to use numbers like this anymore.
But okay, so here is a very important definition, and it's a definition that I think I've agreed upon with Kat. When we talk about James Bond movies, we're putting them in that category. So when it comes to Spider-Man movies, we're not putting this up against fucking 2001. We're putting this up against the other Spider-Man movies.
I would say this is probably out of 10, a 9 or 10
web cartridges.
Web cartridges compared to
How many
Spider-Man 2.
How many did you give it?
I would say 9 or 10.
Okay.
Wow.
I thought it was a great movie.
I think my favorite one is still the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man one.
Well,
and I'm all about Spider-Man 2 because I like Alfred Molina so much in that.
That's the one I have the most nostalgia for because of that summer.
Spider-Man 1 for me. The first time that I saw like actual wall crawling by a Spider-Man actor, Tobey Maguire did it. He is my Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's a good call. I admit that I really like Tom Holland in the role, even though there's some, I think, more missteps in some of his films. I really like Garfield as Peter Parker, though, and I like Garfield as Spider-Man. I think more than I like Holland's Spider-Man, but I do like Holland's Peter Parker because he feels like an actual high school kid.
Yes, very much so.
Like even though he's in his 20s, he still feels like legit closer to. I mean, granted, in the Garfield version, he was already. I think in the first one he's in high school, and then in the second one, he's already going off to college. Kind of like the same in the Maguire films. But yeah, I have to finish rewatching them. Before this one, I watched Spider-Man 2, Homecoming, Far From Home, and the 2 Venom movies, and I hadn't seen Venom 2, so that was the first time I saw that one. So I'll go back and watch the first and third Tobey films, and then the 2 Garfield films.
Well, you don't have to watch the third Tobey film. It's fine.
Watch half of it.
Yeah.
There's half a good movie in there.
I watched that and I'm thinking, I didn't mind Venom. I was like, okay, so they're portraying Eddie Brock as like this antisocial personality disorder person. It's like, okay, I was fine with that. I just don't feel that the emo shit is obviously bad. The fact that they gave Harry amnesia is the laziest way. Like, oh, we don't want to deal with this character right now, so we'll just do this. The fact that MJ, it's like, okay, you've seen Peter deal with Green Goblin, you've seen him deal with Doc Ock, but you're not going to tell him that Harry has figured it out. You're just going to have this super cheesy breakup in the park. And Sandman, unfortunately, just doesn't fit because it's like, if you need to retcon pre-existing lore to justify the character being there, and then you're not even going to provide resolution to the thing you started with that character, which is the whole thing with his daughter, then why is he here? It's like, it just, that's the part I thought was the piece that just didn't fit in that movie.
I kind of view it the same way that I view Lethal Weapon 4. It's a movie, but it feels like a TV special.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen a lot. I remember seeing a lot of ads for that movie when it first came out.
Which one?
Lethal Weapon 4.
Oh, no, it's great. Rene Russo is in it. Anyway, so we've got a 9 or a 10. We've got a 9, and I'm sticking with my 8 because Spider-Man, the first one is my favorite, and that is my Spider-Man 10.
The reason the only reason
I do have a Spider-Man 10.
I didn't give it a 10 simply because it feels too much like a sequel.
This is my Spider-Man 10. This is the ultimate reason that I love the Spider-Man. There is nothing that will ever match the level of joy
Spider-Man is amazing friends.
Gives me. Oh, I love Firestar.
That was where I really watched Spider-Man, was that series.
My God. We're adults.
We're adults. Yeah. So adult.
So does anyone have anything that they would like to sum up?
I thought it was great. I can't wait to add it to my collection.
Neither can I. Are you going to get the Steelbook?
Of course.
You know what? I'm going to go buy every Spider-Man Blu-ray that I can find.
It was very nice to walk out of a theater feeling thoroughly entertained, feeling satisfied at any trope they threw out. I felt satisfied with them. I wasn't like, oh, they did that. No eye rolls for me on it. I just felt entertained. And it was so wonderful to walk out of a theater feeling, wow, that was great, wasn't it? Oh, that was great. And yeah, it had all the little bits and pieces that they love to throw us fans, but you know, they did them all so well. And given the other Marvel movies this year that I watched and I saw, this was just so much far more satisfying than Eternals was.
Oh, yeah, 100 times more satisfying.
And you haven't seen Eternals yet, have you?
My name is Scott.
Yeah, I was looking down at the message. I was looking down at the comments and I saw Tom commented.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. Anyway, no, I haven't seen the Eternals.
Yeah, that's not good.
But like, no, I agree with you. And the thing is, and it's weird, just I don't know if I'm in the realm of movie punditry or if I'm just a guy who yells at my microphones.
You're a guy in a chair.
I'm a guy in a chair. So yeah, no, this made me feel feelings, and I want to fight against how happy it made me. But as a Spider-Man fan, this was a good Spider-Man movie. Like, you should see it. It's great. I have problems with it, but most of them are mine. They have nothing to do with you. This is a joyous Spider-Man movie. Kat?
It was very joyous. I like it a lot. Again, I wish they were able to maybe.
Oh, the cinematography was crap. This was shot like Fantastic Four 2.
I was gonna say,
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think it was that bad.
Well, look forward to our part 2.
In fact, I wanted more of what I would call a money shot moment when he was going to chase down Sandman and Electro. He knew they were out there, and he was like in a rural area jumping through the sky. I thought that was wonderful because it reminded
did look good.
It reminded me scenes of Spider-Verse with Peter and Morales running through the forest. That's what I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and the movie critic, the prolific movie critic Mark Kermode, he mentioned, he's like, well, why would you compare Spider-Man movies to their animated counterparts? They're all animated. And I did enjoy the animation in this movie. Like, it is such a, again, I don't want to be like, I bought a t-shirt. I have a DVD. But no, I love Spider-Man. And this, you know what? I've been trying for a long time to be angry at Spider-Man. And this movie was like, you know what? Stop it. I love Spider-Man.
Yes.
I did come across an article just a few moments ago in which Kevin Feige, was from yesterday in the Hollywood Reporter, does say there's going to be one more film at least between Marvel and Sony. So
great. Well,
I know there were some rumors that there were 3 movies and blah blah blah. And earlier in the show tonight, you mentioned, I think, that this was the last Marvel MCU Spider-Man one, which they did leave it with a clean slate. So they did truly leave it with a clean slate. So they
did. Like, it looked like, in terms of the nobody knows who Peter Parker is, that is a situation where it's like, it's plausible that you can just have Spider-Man comic books now. He's not in the rest of the MCU. He struggles with that. Well, yeah, no, I don't know. I when it comes to comic book movies, I always try and sort of delineate.
Okay.
So, like, you know how you have Amazing Spider-Man and you have Spectacular Spider-Man? And there are sometimes things that go on in Amazing Spider-Man
that are not.
No one knows.
Yeah, they're all completely. They've always. I've been out of comics for so long, but yeah, you're right.
But that's a trope. It's a trope, and I think like that's part of my suspension of disbelief when it comes to these comic book movies, is that it's like, yeah, it's fine. Like when even as Eddie Brock is sitting. So you're saying there's a guy in a tin suit and there was an angry green man? It's like, no. It's all ridiculous. Jesus. Like, Tobey Maguire can shoot webs out of his wrists and that's it. Like, it's definitive. He does not poop web. Anyway.
If he did, would he admit it?
No, he'd just flush.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I suppose if everyone's okay with it, I'm just going to wrap up. All right. Well, that has been our spoiler-filled discussion of our opinions of Spider-Man, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man's 1, 2, and 3, and 1 and 2 Part 2.
Well, we didn't really review all those films, but okay.
If you'd like to see us review those films, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Are there any comments we need to go over in the chat?
Oh, I suppose that would be cordial. Yes, let's. There are a lot of friends in the comments, actually, and I would like to say hello. I was going to end up everything. Kat, you're always so much more gracious than I am. So anyway, Scott,
that would be you.
Scotty R37 in the chat says, ahoy, there will be spoilers, and Edge of Time is here. Yar.
There will be spoilers.
Naladoc is here, as we all are aware and appreciative of. And
Mr. Bunyan Snipe.
Oh, Bunyan Snipe's here.
I've heard of that guy.
But he wasn't on the stream.
Captain Cockney Number Spock is a member of the channel that we will not block. I will say, what? I'll say one thing for Spider-Man. It eschews. You know what? I'm always impressed when someone says eschews.
Rashomon effect is awesome, by the way.
I've never seen it. I've only been told 4 different opinions on the film.
It is an amazing film.
You know what? I just don't like. Never mind. I'm not going to finish that joke.
Don't like Kurosawa films? You hate them?
Like yes.
Okay.
I don't appreciate beauty. I hate color, music, and the Olympics.
It is true. You do. You do. I mean, that's a typical trait from your people. So, but we like you anyway.
Well, I appreciate you including me. Bunyan Snipe says the Wong timeline makes no sense. Why would the Sorcerer Supreme be doing a Fight Club scam with Abomination? That is interesting. That
was an odd throwaway line that Strange is no longer the Sorcerer Supreme. Wong is now, due to a what did they say? A
temporal technicality.
A technicality or something. Yeah. So
he was gone
for 5 years.
Oh, true. Yeah. I gotta keep always remembering that now.
Oh, Sherry is here, and it's always a pleasure when Sherry is here. But more importantly, Cam, not more importantly, that was rude. I appreciate everyone who's here, but it's nice to see. It's nice to see Cam. It's nice to see Sherry. It's nice to see everyone. But more importantly, I just have to remove that from my dialogue. Can we edit that out?
Are there any more?
Yeah, no, there's plenty more.
Is there something wrong?
No, I'm just I'm picking and choosing.
He's looking for quality over quantity.
Yeah.
It is a weird joke that we are still watching this stuff. I did see this quote. Thank you. Hail, Edge of Time. But like, we're talking about cartoon characters and superheroes. And as we joked about, we are adults. Now, my mom is very much into Call the Midwife.
As are my parents.
And I would much rather watch Spider-Man. It's just the thing. Like, your entertainment should be your entertainment. When people get all uppity about culture wars or whatever, it's just like, why can't you just sit there and enjoy and be happy and have your heart grow? Mm-hmm. Tom Jr. Jackson is here.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
I stayed for the Venom credits scene because I have seen that Doctor Strange trailer and I had to get home in time for the Zoom and I had to go to the bathroom bad.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Tom.
Tom, thank you for sharing your urination needs with the Fantasmagorium Show.
You have added color to our conversation, and for that,
with an O-U-R too.
O-U-R. No, and you know what? This is a very valid question. I did not go in my underoos. I dressed like an adult when I went out in public. I only dressed like a child for you. What's this one? Catherine?
No, Tom. I'm not going to be tucking Scott in because he has his underoos pajamas on.
And in honor of Frosty the Snowman,
it's Tim.
It is Tim. Happy birthday. So anyway,
whose birthday is it?
Whose birthday?
Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
December 18th?
He's a Capricorn.
Okay.
I guess. I don't know.
I don't know.
Either way. So yeah, no, I skipped over a bunch of Tom's messages, and you're welcome.
Has anybody died in the chat?
Not yet.
Okay.
We only die on the show. So thank you for if you are watching, thank you, and you've made it this far. Congratulations. I hope to see you all at Martini's Gadgets and Guns on Wednesday. Are we doing a giveaway?
We might be.
We may be.
Depends on when things arrive in the mail.
Ooh.
That's what I've heard. So thank you all for coming around and talking about Spider-Man and watching. I gotta go. I have so many things to do.
All right.
Do you have it? You can say a goodbye salutation.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That's it? That's all you got?
Go see Spider-Man's.
Go see Spider-Man's.
Looking to make about